B.A.Y.E.R, the wonder drug that works wonders.
This is the story of how the multinational drug company, B.A.Y.E.R, infected thousands of people with hepatitis C and H.I.V, many of whom have since died. You may already know of B.A.Y.E.R's dark past when it comes to IG Farben, World War II and the Nazis. But this story takes place about 30 years later.
First of all, you are suing the manufacturer of the blood product that infected your son.
Right. We're suing Miles Cutter Pharmaceutical Company.
You allege, among other things in your lawsuit, and we'll pick up some more details about this, that you're alleging gross negligence at the time. In other words, all kinds of yellow lights went on. I mean, here we were in 1982 talking about this.
They knew.
You believe they knew?
Absolutely. They could have saved Eric's life. They could have stopped the train coming down that track.
In the 1970s and 1980s, B.A.Y.E.R and its subsidiaries, Cutter and Miles Laboratories, manufactured and sold a blood product called Co-8. Thousands of people were infected with hepatitis and HIV by factor VIII blood products such as Co-8. This drug was most commonly used by people with the blood clotting disorder, haemophilia. We're going to be looking at this from a US and UK perspective, but bear in mind this infected product was sold around the world for more than a decade.
There was a small little company that reached out to the Third Reich and said, hey, we need 150 participants for our clinical trial. The Nazi regime shipped 150 healthy Jewish women to this pharmaceutical company to test its products. Literally, within 6 months, there's letters back to the Third Reich from this pharmaceutical company saying, thank you so much for your cooperation. The women arrived in great health and working order. Unfortunately, none of them made it through the initial phases of our trial. They killed 150 women. We kindly request that you send us another 150 women. That little company became B.A.Y.E.R, which is now a mega pharmaceutical company. And I say that because, right, that was the 50s. It would have changed by now. That was forever ago, right? The world's a different place. We would never allow that today. Jump forward post-World War II. I talked about this on RFK's podcast. Eisenhower had that.
Can I pause there? You said it was the 50s. It couldn't have been the 50s.
Well, the 40s, sorry.
Okay.
And so jump forward to, is there a way to turn the volume down on this?
There's a button or knob right there.
There we go. So jump forward to Eisenhower's speech, his famous speech about the military-industrial complex. What a lot of people don't realize is there was a second half to that speech where Eisenhower warned the American people about the medical-industrial complex. He warned that if we allow private industry to control, monopolize, and profiteer off of health and healthcare, that they will silo innovation, stifle innovation, and capitalize and monetize innovation. And I would argue that's 100% what we've seen, and it's continuing. So, and the reason I want to walk the public through this is because to understand what's going on, you've got to see the history of how it's happened. So now you jump forward to the 80s. Okay, time and time again, when Big Pharma has had an opportunity to choose left or right, over and over again, they have chose profits over patient outcomes. So 1980s, B.A.Y.E.R launches a hemophilia drug. They inadvertently contaminate thousands of specimens with HIV. They know that they've contaminated specimens with HIV, this drug with HIV virus. What do? They have a decision, destroy all of it or ship it to the public anyway. They shipped it into third world countries, Africa and Asian markets, and infected 20,000 people with the HIV virus.
What?
This is the 80s when it was a death sentence. And so I say that to set the groundwork for Why would they ban peptides?
Look at this from this article. A division of the pharmaceutical company Bayer sold millions of dollars of blood clotting medicine for hemophiliacs, medicine that carried a high risk of transmitting AIDS to Asia and Latin America in the mid-1980s while selling a new, safer product in the West, according to documents obtained by the New York Times. Holy shit.
And to everything I referenced, Jamie, because this was something last time, I am going to mention a lot of controversial stuff. So I've listed reference after reference after reference on the Ways to Well website. Anything that I reference will be on there as well. But so jump forward, they infect all these people with HIV. Okay. In the 80s, compounding pharmacies and specialty pharmacies and generic manufacturers attempted to create HIV treatment options that were affordable for third world countries. Because at the time, it was like $14,000 a month for an HIV treatment to keep you alive. Nobody could afford that in those countries. So what happens? Does Big Pharma, in a market they can't sell, in a market they can't touch, in a market where they inadvertently infected, or I would say almost knowingly infected 20,000 people with HIV, they then lobby with the U.S. government, file and sue the shit out of all of these companies that were attempting to make cost-effective generics. It caught it up in litigation for 3 years before finally they bent to the will of the American people and the feedback of the public. There was outrage over this. And finally, after 3 years of litigation, Big Pharma said, basically, screw it. Go ahead and give them the HIV, let them make these HIV meds in these countries that aren't buying our product anyway. And so I just say all this so you know the people we're dealing with, right? And then you jump forward to the opioid crisis, which was predicated by the Valium crisis of I think that was the 40s or 50s. And so time and time again. And so how does the FDA come to these conclusions? It's because a majority of their funding comes from private industry, and a majority of their discussion, their talk track, their influence, their belief systems, and their thought processes are being influenced by these companies.
Next month marks 32 years since the Centers for Disease Control first acknowledged that medicine meant to treat the disease hemophilia was actually infecting people with the HIV virus. This outbreak among hemophiliacs in the early 80s infected between 6,000 and 10,000 people, despite the fact that pharmaceutical companies, chiefly pharma giant Bayer, knew the plasma they were using to create their blood clotting product was tainted. So here to discuss this harrowing anniversary and what the case tells us about corporate accountability today, I'm joined now by attorney, host of Ring of Fire Radio, Mike Papantonio. Thanks so much, Mike, for coming on.
Happy good to be here.
So for those that don't know about this case, can you quickly explain how Bayer was able to sell HIV-contaminated blood products to the public and how early Bayer knew about the problem?
Well, they knew about it within a year and a half after the product was on the market. They knew there was some contamination in the blood that was causing some very serious illness. And they said, well, gee, we didn't know that was HIV. We didn't know it was AIDS. Well, they did. All they had to do was do basic testing even at that point. But what's worse is once they knew that whatever it was in the blood was killing people, they said, you know what, we're going to take it off the market here. And then they immediately started selling in places like South America and Asia, where people actually went to prison. You had actually people working for the companies overseas going to prison. Nobody went to prison here. They killed thousands of people. They knowingly killed thousands of people. Because you know why? Because they said, we have all of this stuff in stock. We have to do something with it, so what are we going to do? We're going to sell it to a place where nobody knows about it. And so you'd have children that would infect the entire family with the AIDS virus. And interestingly enough, again, nobody went to prison in the United States.
Wow, I guess just a bunch of market casualties there, huh? I mean, wow, what an unbelievable criminal act here. Why were there no criminal charges against top executives at the company in this own country?
Well, at that point, they had started developing a lobby. I actually handled part of that case, and they sent so much lobby money to Washington, D.C., that the Department of Justice didn't do what they should have done. But we're seeing this with designer drug products that are killing and crippling consumers, Abby, all over the United States. Typically, they make it to the market with the same the same steps. First, the industry capitalizes on direct-to-consumer advertising laws that are only good in the United States and Australia, where they can tell a consumer, hey, use our drug, use our factor VIII drug, and it'll solve your problem with clotting. And then that's direct-to-consumer advertising that you don't see anywhere else. So they create the need for the market. They even go as far as creating diseases sometimes. They create diagnosable diseases that we've never even heard of before. Turn on your TV on most days and you'll see drugs being hustled for everything ranging from restless feet to restless eyes, for God's sakes. Feeling old, you take testosterone gel. Feeling underperformer, you take Viagra. Feeling sad, mad, or overly glad, you pop a pink pill or two and you're good as new. The first step for any accomplished drug hustler is to create the need for this endless market with an advertising blitz, and that's the new designer drug approach. That's only the first step. And the first step, too, of course, is to hustle the FDA and use the FDA insiders that you're paying money to indirectly to go to work.
What a mess. I mean, this is just so insane, though, because, I mean, knowingly infecting people and then sending it to developing countries that you know is tainted medication here that could cause HIV. I mean, it's just a whole nother level of insanity here, Mike. I mean,
Bayer knows they're selling this highly risky product, but just carry on selling it anyway. Co-8 is still being sold in the UK, and patients are continuing to be exposed to hepatitis and AIDS over and over again. The corporate mentality of Bayer in 1983 is probably best encapsulated by an internal memo from May of that year, which, in relation to AIDS, being in Co-8, says, "We have to fight the fire with a short-term solution that will preserve our market position." Bayer also talks in the document about ways in which it could make its product safer by heating it. Remember that other blood product, albumin, which was heated to kill viruses? Well, Bayer could have used a similar heating process with Co-8. The heat could kill hepatitis and HIV, making it safe. But this heating process made the product less profitable, and it would require investment and resource. Arguably, this is what Bayer should have done before they were ever allowed to sell Co-8 at all, to make their products safe. But that didn't happen. Bayer continued to sell infected, non-heated Co-8 in the UK throughout 1983 and 1984. It wasn't until 1985 that finally only heated Co-8 began to be sold in the UK, thereby bringing an end to a decade of Bayer selling non-heated, infected Co-8 in the UK. Some 1,250 people in the UK were infected with HIV through factor VIII blood products such as Co-8. At least 2,000 more were infected with hepatitis C, and only around 250 of those infected with HIV are thought to still be alive now, with most having died of AIDS in the early to mid-90s. And some 300 of those infected with HIV were children. No one from Bayer has ever been held accountable for what happened.
This is about seeing the pain. This is about not sanitizing bad news. This is about telling the truth. And here it is. This is Eric.
What's the force that keeps driving you?
My parents. And the Bible.
Yeah, and we know that's rough, but so is this story. And maybe we should have cried a long time ago, you know?
Phil, we have documents that state that they knew that they had a problem with that product before Eric ever got his first shot and before thousands of other kids ever got their first shot. They knew. There's document proof.
And they didn't do anything about it
because money and greed.
And we'll be back.
The Special Virus Program is only part of a sophisticated scheme to cull humanity. This court cannot deny the existence of this program with the current submission of the 1971 flowchart. The experts have reviewed the flowchart, and it is authentic. The Special Virus Program isolated, stabilized, and mass-produced a leukemia lymphoma virus. Plaintiff brings to the court's attention that H.I.V. was originally called leukemia lymphoma virus. And each of you tonight is receiving a copy of this flowchart, but I wanted to put it on the record in front of the camera as well. Here is the 1971 flowchart. This is the United States government document. It takes the research logic of the Special Virus Program from A to Z. The people have definitive proof of another non-public human subject experiment gone awry. We have compensated our victims before. We must do so again. The Constitution requires it. The heart of true America compels it.